All right, I know we've all been there, trying to make a chord progression, and you're in that rut, and you can't get out, trying to make something original, but you can't do it. Well, today, I'm gonna give you some advice on how to spice up your own chord progressions. But first, let's get an agenda about what we're gonna talk about today. So first, we're gonna talk about the basics. So I'm gonna talk about some like basic theories, so scales, chords, just how to form a chord progression, and then something called modal interchange. It's pretty spicy, and then how to use it to make your chord progressions cooler. So like I said, we're going to cover the basics first. First I'm going to talk about what's called the C major scale. So we've all we've heard the term scale before, but maybe we don't understand exactly what it is. So a scale basically is 8 notes. A major scale is 8 notes. And I have this pen up here to help you kind of understand it. So basically, you start on C, naturally. This is C. But basically, you go from C all the way to the octave of C. So it sounds like this. Sounds pretty wholesome. Just a normal major scale. But we want to talk about chord progressions. So in order to make a chord, the most basic chord is a triad. And if you took like Word Within a Word English class back in the day, tri means 3. So naturally, there's going to be 3 notes in this chord. So in order to make a basic triad, you want to take 3 notes away from your starting note. So in this case, since we're talking about a C major scale, we're talking about the note C. And 3 notes away from C, including C as 1, is E. And so that's your third away. So that's a triad. And so if we do that all the way up until C, if we start from E, and then so now you have all of these, which are what are called thirds, because it's 3 notes away. So then you go from having to sounds kind of nice. But then we're not talking about thirds, we're talking about triads, we're talking about chords. So we have to do this step yet again, take 3 notes away from E, which in this case, it's going to be G. And so we do that all the way up until E. And so now we have, if you look at it, we're all in these block chords. So these are called the diatonic chords of each scale. And diatonic is just like a super fancy way of saying it's just all scalar. So C scale involves all the white keys, none of the fancy black keys. So now instead of having just a normal C scale, we have these block chords. And so these chords, basically, like I said before, we want to make a chord progression. Just to understand what a chord progression is, it's just normally like in pop music, it's just like 4 or 5 chords that sound nice together, and you sing over it and you have a good time. And so I'm gonna show you the most basic of like pop chord progressions. I guess I kind of skipped a step, but in music, what we usually talk about is for labeling chords, we use Roman numerals. So, for example, the chord after this one chord, this I here, is a 6 chord because 5 plus 1 is 6. So, let's say for 4, 5, and 1. So I'm just going to play this chord progression for you, and it just involves the same chord that we were using earlier. It's just using them in a different order. So you might recognize it from any pop song that you hear on the radio. That's really nice. So it's pretty wholesome. It's not too complicated. Gets the job done. And like I said before, we're not going to play these videos, but it's found in a lot of pop songs. Stand By Me and Octopus Garden is just a few examples. And the only chords in them are just involved in these 4 chords. But they use them in a certain order, a certain way, that make it sound more complicated than it actually is. And so last thing we're going to cover in the basics is something that's called modes. It's a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to try and say it as simple as possible. But a mode is just a type of scale that has a specific characteristics tied to it. So there's 7 main church modes because they were developed mostly in church, and there's a list of them. There's 7, so they all come from one scale, but you just start on a different note. So you have Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, and so on. And these modes, the best way to understand them is just taking your C scale and then start from a different note. So, like I said before, C scale goes from C to C, but the second mode from C is Dorian, and you just start from D and you go to D. That's Dorian. So Ionian, Dorian. It's a little bit different, sounds minor, sounds cool. And modal interchange is just involving all of these modes together and taking different chords from those modes and intertwining them into your chord progression. And these can add various colors that weren't in your normal chord progression before. So this looks really complicated, but it's not actually as complicated as it looks. So before we went, we just used these same 4 chords over and over again, and we're just using Ionian. We're just in our basic major scale, and but you can use any of the chords in this whole list to spice up your chord progression. But just for today, I'm going to talk about Aeolian. It's the 6th mode, and I'm just going to focus on one chord and then another chord today, D minor 7/5. And so, how do we use it? And if we take our common chord progression, which is the pretty normal, and we take that D minor 7/5 chord, we add to our progression. It sounds a hell of a lot cooler. So let's jump to that for you. That sounds very nice. Okay. So this. Oh, and then we take the same chord progression, and then I'm going to add a different chord, B flat 7. It's going to sound a little bit. And I'm adding some extra chords in there too, but it sounds kind of cool. Yeah, and so there's endless possibilities what you can do with this. You can take any mode from any scale and any chord from in that mode and intertwine it in what chord progression you want to do. So there's literally endless possibilities of what you can do. So just to recap what we did, we talked about the basics, scale theory, modes, just chords, triads, and chord progressions. And then we talked about cool stuff, modal interchange, what exactly is it, and then we talked about how to use it in your chord progression. So we went from the simple chord progression, just